Greetings, I'm Rob Ferguson, and I'd like to talk to you about a subject that most people try to avoid. But by avoiding this issue, you only add stress and heartache to those that you love. So sit back and listen so that you can plan and relax in the knowledge that those that you love will not be burdened.
I want to go out without causing anyone a lot of grief.
A lot of people want to shorten the grief span and remember the good times with the person.
I've talked to my sister, whom I feel is the one I should discuss it with, and she said whatever I want is fine with her.
The price of the cremation is probably about a third of a traditional funeral. A lot of people really do not have enough insurance or whatever. That's an important thing.
Each of us is going to die at some time. There's no denying it. Many people choose to avoid the subject, and then when they die, grieving family members are left to make many hurried decisions about the deceased and their remains.
I always have the urge to be prepared and to plan it. I don't want anyone else to have to run around looking for a funeral plot and, oh, what are we going to put on her and what dress or what shall we wear on her and all this at the last minute. Grief is not the time to be doing this, and I don't want anyone to be burdened with me.
You know, there are so many options available for burial presented at the time of death. By pre-planning now and making your wishes known to family members, it takes the stress off of them at a sad moment and ensures you of the arrangements that you desire.
He chose the place, and he chose the spot. It wouldn't have been my choice, but it was his choice. And he had his reasons, and I honored those. I don't care, really. When I'm gone, I'm not going to care about one thing here. And that won't be a problem for me. But he liked the area and the place and the significance of it, and it was all right. And I chose the headstone, but he knew what was chosen, and they came to the house because he wasn't able then to be up and around. And when he approved of it, they just went ahead and prepared it, and that was it.
One option becoming popular is cremation. Heat is applied to the deceased body until it is turned to cremated remains. Options with cremation include personalized memorial services and interment. And as you will see, the first crematory in North America was established in Washington, Pennsylvania during the late 19th century.
Dr. Francis Julius Lemoyne was a physician from Washington, Pennsylvania, who in the late 1850s started studying the spread of disease. He felt that decaying bodies in the ground contributed to the spread of disease and believed that through the process of cremation, he could help bring an end to this problem. It was his original desire that the crematory would be placed on public property, but because of protests from religious leaders, he was forced to build a crematory on his own property. It was completed in 1876, and it was in that same year that the first cremation took place. That person was Baron de Palm. He was a Bavarian prince and a theologian. Upon his death, his body was brought here to Washington, and he was embalmed. The cremation took place on December 6, 1876. Physicians from all over the country were invited to witness the cremation. 24 hours ahead of time, they lit the furnace and let it heat up. After the 24 hours was up, the body of the Baron was placed in the enclosure, and 2 hours later, the cremation was complete. All visitors were very impressed to see that the flames never touched the body, and it's because of this process that Francis is credited with inventing modern cremation. There was about 5 pounds of ashes left over, and they found that the average for all the cremations was between 5 and 7 pounds. The crematory was used until 1901, and there was a total of 42 cremations altogether. The third person cremated was the inventor of the crematory, Francis Lemoyne. He died in 1879. His ashes are located in an urn underneath a headstone in front of the crematory.
So, Dr. Lemoyne, the good-hearted doctor from Washington, Pennsylvania, had the foresight and understanding to develop a new way to care for the deceased. From these humble beginnings over 100 years ago, cremation has grown steadily as a popular choice. Currently, cremations look nothing like they did back then. Today, crematories are exceptionally clean and bodies are handled with the utmost care.
I mean, I'm going to have a real festive atmosphere with my my final arrangements. I mean, it's going to be a little, I wouldn't say more of a Mardi Gras type of, if that'll give you plan a picture for you, with all my friends and everything. So basically, they're going to remember this one. They're going to remember this outgoing. It's going to be like, boy, I wish he could come around again to do it again. Yeah, definitely. That's the consensus. That's what I think that it should be. I think that it's a passing on, and it still should be. There's a celebration at the beginning of life. There should be a celebration at the end too. I mean, there should be that, and it should encompass everything. Not only the cremation and the funeral and everything. It should all just be a smooth flow and a great time.
For many years, different schools of religious thought often collided and presented difficulties for those who preferred cremation. Today, as you will see, the Catholic and Protestant churches have found common ground in their acceptance of cremation.
The central doctrine in the Christian faith is the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ. And that is similar for the Presbyterians and other Protestant denominations. Hence, the focus is then on life, not on death, loss, pain, or suffering. So cremation is a fully accepted and a fully functional form of caring for the body after life ceases, as long as it is handled with dignity, respect, and care, and in a worshipful setting. The Apostle Paul spoke at great length about a new life in Jesus Christ, a new body in Jesus Christ. So with the focus on hope, with the focus on resurrection and new life, then cremation is and has been for some time within the Presbyterian Church a very viable and equal option, again, for the care of the body following death, as long as it is handled in a worshipful and respectful way.
Up until recently, shared with the vast majority of the Judeo-Christian tradition, a condemnation of the practice of the burning of the bodies of the dead, or cremation, except in certain circumstances, namely war or plague or that kind of thing. The reasons are many. However, times have changed and circumstances have changed, and the Catholic community now allows cremation of the body. It accords greater value, though, to the burial of the human body, because the body is really the place that is sacred. It is the place that has been the temple of the Spirit. The Church does ask a couple of things. That if our reason for wanting cremation is because we do not believe in the resurrection of the body, then we should not move in that direction. The Church would prefer that the funeral liturgy take place with the body present and cremation later. If that's not present, though, the cremains should be brought to the church and placed in a place of reverence during the funeral liturgy. But very importantly, the burial of the cremains should also be done with great reverence. And just as you would with the body of one who is buried, they should be buried in the ground, or at sea, or in a columbarium, or a mausoleum, and in a fitting container or an urn. The scattering of ashes or the placing on a mantle is something that is not permitted.
What I searched the scripture for was to see if it had any definite direction on it, and I discovered that there were those that had been cremated, but not in a good sense. It was either in battle or some other situation. And of old, the bones were carried back to where they were directed by the one who was in charge. And I probably wouldn't have gone for cremation earlier in my life, but when I got to thinking about all the people that are in mass graves, all the people that have died down through the ages and are dust now, and the soul, when it leaves the body, does not go to the ground. And I figured we're all going to be dust anyway, so what difference does it make?
Do you know that traditionally over 90% of those that are cremated still opt for a grave site and a monument? But due to the popularity of cremation, one viable option is interment within niches such as these. With guided pre-planning, options can be explored and decisions established.
You know what you want, and you get to pick what you want when you're pre-planning, and you're not left to the mercy of anyone who comes along that wants to do it.
I'm an emergency medical technician, and I've worked on ambulances, and you're in a life and death situation with your patients quite often, hospice patients, and you see very often people that are near death. And the grieving and the suddenness of it sometimes is very difficult and quite a difficult time for the families. Cremation is definitely going to be something that is going to play an important role with these people, that is going to take a lot of that burden and that grieving away if it's pre-planned to some extent. A lot of times that, especially from an ambulance crew standpoint, you'll hear very often that this was so, that we were not expecting this, which a lot of times the legality, power of attorney, a lot of the things have never taken place, never been pre-arranged, even to the point where the person, they might have been a major person in the family who was a decision maker, and now all the other members of the family, where it might be a wife or children or something, have no idea what the plan would be. Whereas it would have been so easy to pre-plan that, sit down with the family. That's what my family had done, and say, you know, we're not trying to be grim and gruesome or anything, but we're just going to say, this is a part of life, and we're just going to try to make it a little easier on you.
Dee, Alice, and Brian have decided what is best for themselves, and their choice was cremation. Dr. Lemoyne's foresight is now today's standard practice. And my task as a licensed funeral director, and that of all licensed funeral directors, is to assist you in making the best choices. A cremation service should truly be a celebration of a life well lived.
The more time went on, we began to think that this was the way to go.
I would say that there's some major reasons for cremation. First off, it's going to really cut down on the grieving process if it's been pre-planned. The economic side, it's definitely much more economical. Also, it's going to be something that down the road the people have the ability of making another memorial later on, or they still have some time to do that final, if they want to, a celebration or whatever. And it's going to be something that once it's been pre-planned and it's out of the way, it's going to be something that the family, when that time comes, and it's inevitable for everybody, it's going to make it a lot easier on the people that were closest to that loved one who does pass on.
Pre-planning now will lessen the strain of loss for your loved ones and let them focus on their love for you. It is the most caring thing that you can do for your family. For more details on cremation options in your area, please call our toll-free cremation care line at 1-888-894-5300 today.
People do that, you know, they say, well, I'll have to do it, but they don't.
Are you concerned about the high cost of dying? Funerals, caskets, vaults, and cemetery charges can sometimes exceed $7,000. Today, consumers are seeking a dignified and economic alternative, such as cremation. I'm Rob Ferguson, your professional cremation service provider in Westmoreland and Fayette County. Please call me toll-free at 1-888-894-5300 to plan your cremation service today.